Welcome back to our next episode of Doggone Truth About Rescue with Always and Furever. Tonight we'll be following up on the results of the Miami County Public Planning Commission hearing and where we ended with that on April 4th for the zoning of the homestead. We have 3 guests with us tonight that were there and a part of the meeting. If you guys could introduce yourselves.
Good evening or day. I'm Sarah, driver extraordinaire.
Sort of driver extraordinaire. I'm Judy Catter-Henrick. I'm also a driver extraordinaire.
I'm Amy Stecker. I'm volunteer and realtor.
And of course, my sidekick, side host.
Hey now.
That's Cyrita. She can't even introduce herself. So starting with the meeting, there was no ending to it. It's actually going to continue because so many people showed up. We asked for support and we received thousands of letters. We had over 135 supporters in person. We had hundreds watching the live feed on Facebook. And then it was also broadcasted on the county's page. So if you were watching through that, thank you. We just couldn't see a number on that. So because so many people showed up and it's a public hearing, it got continued into May. And we are going to kind of recap that meeting and then what we should be doing moving forward to prepare for that next May meeting. So who would like to start with a brief recap?
First of all, thanks to everybody who supported us with emails. You were awesome, rock stars. We took a 1.5 foot pile of emails back as hard copies into the county office, and we were absolutely inspired by the number of people who showed up. So thank you. The process is, first, you go to a public hearing with the Planning Commission staff for the county, and they have received your proposal. They write up a report responding to it, and then they make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. They allow for a public hearing, and that was what April 4th was supposed to be. There are 10 criteria called the Golden Criteria for rural residential zoning within Miami County, and they have based their critique of our proposal on those 10 criteria. We're happy to say we are in compliance with almost every point in that criteria, but that we also have to respond to the input of people who live within 1,000 feet of the outside perimeters of where we are, which means some of the people within 1,000 feet will live a quarter mile away from our potential homestead.
From the nearest building, because
Yes.
the building will be inside.
That's true. We've heard that there's an unprecedented number of supporters there. They've never seen a group of supporters as strong as this. We're not only overflowing the meeting room, we were in the hallways and we were across the street in other buildings.
So I heard throughout the live that they didn't expect as many as supporters there for Always and Forever.
So you all did an awesome job of supporting our cause. And we're so grateful. We've been continued to May 2nd, and we need your help again. And that's why we're here tonight.
And I almost laughed. I think it was a new person on the board that asked how long this will keep going. And the woman corrected him and said, as long as no one else has anything to say. And I don't know if they actually know what that meant to us because of the thousands of supporters and the people that do show up to want to see this come to fruition. But I do want to go over the parameters that are set if you do show up to the meeting and kind of what happened at the meeting of if you were watching. Everybody got only 2 minutes, why it was limited to that, and then who got to speak and when.
So if you showed up to the meeting, you were supposed to sign in with your name and address and say on their sheet whether or not you were planning to speak or not. The order it was supposed to go in was they read the report in, which was 27 pages. So if you were watching, that was what the 90-minute beginning of that was, just reading the report into the record. And then Jen had her opportunity with the lawyers to present our side. It was supposed to be the people within 1,000 feet were supposed to speak, and it kind of became a free-for-all of whoever got up there. But everybody had 2 minutes, and they had a timer or something. I was out in the hallway, but...
Yeah, saw a lot of people were questioning why there weren't supporters talking at the beginning, and that's because we were all trying to go by what we were told, which is that the Miami County within 1,000 feet should be speaking first. And then Miami County residents, and then outside. They didn't really direct us once people were up there, so that's why you then started to see some supporters outside of the 1,000 feet.
Yeah,
We do have supporters within the 1,000 feet. One had COVID, correct?
Correct. So there's an opportunity on May 2nd for any of our close neighbors in Spring Hill who are in support of this project. We really need you to come down on May 2nd. The doors open at 6:30, and we would like to be first in line for those of you neighbors who are eligible to speak, because you are the voices that are most important to us.
And you don't have to use the whole 2 minutes. That's the other thing I was telling people that were there that were scared to get up and talk. And I said, really, if you just get up and say your name and your address and that you support Always and Forever and you wanted them to approve the conditional use permit and you walk off, fantastic. It's another person that spoke in support of us.
I think they would actually appreciate that.
They probably would.
Yeah, they actually would like that, because we've been told that nobody likes a decision that's made at 2 a.m. by angry, tired people. So as many people as we can get out to say, I support them, and sit down, that's great. We love you.
Finally hearing the opposition for the first time, because we can talk about it and we know everyone in this room is support of it, but to finally see where they're coming from. And at points, I think it's relatable. I think we can all kind of relate to what they're saying, that if it was happening in my neighborhood, how would I feel about this? Interesting question for the group. Has anyone been in the opposition of something being built near your house?
I definitely have a not in your backyard story. I live in a quiet neighborhood, walking distance to a park and walking distance to a golf course. The golf course had been there for 40 years. We all love the golf course. I wasn't a member of the golf course. I never played on the golf course, but it was really great to have it there. And then the golf course went defunct, and developers started trying to buy the golf course. So, not in my backyard, honey. I was militant. I went to every city council meeting. I saw their beautiful blueprints. I saw their beautiful posters of the way it would look when it was developed on the easels in the meeting room. I didn't care. I just didn't want it in my backyard. I fought and I fought. And about a year later, after all the fighting, there was some concessions made, and they made another entrance to the golf course so that it wouldn't all come down my street. And you know what? It's the most wonderful thing in our neighborhood. I am so happy we have that. The 2 years that they spent constructing this, I took my grandson in a stroller and we watched excavators dig giant pits, and it was amusing and wonderful. And now there's a beautiful sledding hill that's the best sledding hill in Kansas City metro area. It's a very well-kept secret, and you're all invited to my house when it snows. And if I ever sell our house, my lead sentence in my description will be, I am walking distance to this park, which I fought so badly. And I just think you have to go with the vision. You have to watch what happens. And it can, happily ever after, can come true.
I take a step back and think of the greater cause and what this actually means for the whole county, and not just one individual person or family. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I would like to think everyone would do, is think of the greater for the county and not just personal gain or losses in one matter. But they did bring up a lot of concerns that I think we should address. Kind of our answers to those, or why someone might see it a concern, but in our eyes, why we don't see that as a concern, and how it's actually could be a positive. Parking, traffic, dog waste, safety, cats, and animals being dropped off were the main ones that caught my attention. So what is Always and Forever's response to those?
Well, one of mine that I thought was a little bit funny was they have a feral cat problem in the neighborhood. And I was like, this is a dog sanctuary, and we actually don't have cats loose on our property. We don't want cats loose on our property. Because it poses a hazard to them and the dogs. And we're not planning on having loose cats. They will all be contained in the cat building. And so I'm not sure where that came from.
Concerns for the people that lived on 223rd is the traffic. We did a traffic study. We paid for it. I think they said if we added like 1,500 trips a day. We make it to 50% of capacity. I mean, we're not doing as much as Judy and Sarah run every day. I don't think they're adding 1,500.
The semis are coming down there now, which don't have anything, again, to do with us. We can't control that. Another person said speeding and stuff like that, which I have concerns about that as well, because they've changed the speed limit from 55 to 45. And now, people come up on me going 80 miles an hour, it seems like, and pass me in no passing zones and all kinds of dangerous stuff. But they never pull into Always and Forever.
As someone who lived on a main road, a very big main road, I lived on Road Boulevard. That is what you take when you live on a main road. You take on the fact that it will develop. I can promise you Road Boulevard 20 years ago is not the Road Boulevard of today. And everyone that lives on it has had to adapt and change. And you want to talk about speeding. My gosh, right in front of my house all the time. And there were car chases. But that was the risk we took when we did it. And 223rd has always been a main street. And now that the semis are going through it, but that is not on Always and Forever.
And the semis are not coming to Always and Forever. So people were talking about, we're concerned people are going 70 miles an hour down there. If they're going 70 miles an hour, they're not stopping to turn into Always and Forever. It's the price of change in a changing, growing, developing, very popular community. And if you're familiar with Spring Hill, which I never was until now, every corner of Spring Hill has a subdivision getting built. This is the one corner on a major exit that is still rural residential. And our intent is to comply with all the criteria that are required to be a rural residential acreage. We are not trying to commercialize that corner of Spring Hill at all. We want it just like our neighbors do. We want it to stay peaceful and beautiful.
I think that's such a main component of Always and Forever is that we emphasize peace, the serenity that comes within it. So the thought of us coming in to changing that within the community when that's our purpose of what we're trying to achieve with these dogs and animals.
Of Spring Hill, it's around 8,500. When most of these neighbors built their homes in the early 2000s, it was under 4,000. So you're looking at a 50% increase, and it's only growing. Spring Hill's one of the fastest growing cities in the area because naturally it starts to grow out. As people can't afford closer into the city, they're going to go out. That's just the way it happens, and development's going to happen. And at least with us, we are doing it for the betterment. We're aware of the issues and we're willing to address them. We want to keep everything peaceful. I mean, that's what Always and Forever is being peaceful.
Going along with that, I actually did some math. In the report, they said we were developing 77,849 acres, which was bigger than the Price Chopper. But the Price Chopper sits on a much smaller area. And I Googled how many square feet are in 40 acres. And it's 1,742,400 square feet. And when you actually divide that out, it comes out to 4.46% of the land. Okay, another thing they talked about was how much of the area that we're actually developing on the 40 acres. So in the report, it says we're developing 77,849 square feet. And that was compared to the Price Chopper, which is 45,000 square feet, but sits on a much smaller area. So I Googled how many square feet are in 40 acres, and it comes out to 1,742,400 square feet. And so if you actually divide that out, it's 4.46% of the land.
So the one thing they drilled into us in real estate school was how many square feet are in an acre, and it's 43,560. So yes, 77,000 sounds like a lot. It does. And when you put it all together into a Price Chopper, yeah, that's huge. But this isn't even 2 acres on a 40-acre property, and it's spread out in small buildings. I think our biggest is 5,000 square feet building. So we're spreading it out, and it's 2 acres out of 40. And so then everything else is going to remain untouched, and it's going to be surrounded by woods and trees and the coverage that you see now.
Jen also made a good point at the meeting that, did anybody know what was going on up there before we took over? Because that place was so full of trash, and there was dilapidated buildings. I think there was an outhouse that we took out. There's tires all over the place, but nobody knew that was going on because it's so well contained.
You can take it out if you want to, but what if the others would have purchased this land before Jen did? They could have, right?
Absolutely. One of the greatest things I think about this purchase that Amy actually made possible was that this land has stood empty except for some random cows who visit us every spring through the fence. And it's been entirely wooded and empty. And it's going to remain wooded. It will be utilized, but it won't be warehouses. It won't be subdivisions. It will be an integral part of the neighborhood.
You bring up a very good point that was a concern with the cows that I want to circle back on, of the waste. And Sarah, I know you're going to touch on it too. There were cows on this property before. There could be hundreds of cows on this property if we wanted to put them on there. There could be, I don't know how many cows you can put on 40 acres. Pigs, any animal we could put on there that you don't pick up their waste. It just goes into the ground and goes into, they were talking about the ponds or something, the sewer lines, the watershed, that was already happening with the cows. And so, Sarah, if you want to talk about like why that would not be happening with the shelter.
People were upset that they said there was no way on earth that we could pick up dog poop and get it all picked up. And we somehow managed to do it every day now.
3 times a day.
3 times a day at least. And when I was managing the barn, if I was out watching dogs, I would pick up some poop as I saw it. So it is possible. I do it at my own house. I've done it at other rescues. So I do think it's possible, and especially when everybody's on the same page about it, that it needs to happen.
And this goes back to having employees, which the staff, for some reason, seem to think that was a negative because it does bring more traffic. It brings more people to the area. But without staff, that doesn't get done. So we have to have staff to walk the dogs, care for the dogs, make sure they don't get out, pick up the poop, clean up, keep the smell down. So the employees are a definite benefit, despite the staff making it seem like it was a detriment.
I think one of the beauties of both volunteers and staff is that the dogs are constantly supervised. Every waking hour, those dogs are awake. There is someone with them, watching them, playing with them, training them. This is not, as we say a million times, not your average dog shelter. When Jen wakes them up for breakfast until they have their good night video at night, they are engaged in play groups, in groups. They're never outside unattended ever. They're never walked unattended ever.
And this is very different from how it started. So I think that a lot of what they bring up from the negatives are from 4 years ago. Judy and I, and probably Sarah, used to go to the barn and they weren't supervised. The dogs were out. It was how it started. It has evolved, beyond anything. And now it's like a well-oiled machine.
One of the interesting things about the people who are opposed to the project, and I would be too, I have been in a not in my backyard situation, but we see the vision because we've grown with the vision. It's not just a picture on a poster board or an easel or a blueprint. We know what this will be. And unfortunately, if you haven't grown through it, it's scary. It might be a big dog warehouse, and it's not going to be. It's going to be something wonderful and peaceful and an asset to the community. And it's when you drive past our homestead, it's going to look a lot like it does now, except the ditches will probably be mowed.
And hopefully somebody will pick up the trash.
Yeah. I think the biggest compliment was the guy that's over the Ozpound now, the owner, operator, of him coming in and saying that all these other shelters have come in before Always and Forever and made all of these promises but never followed up with them. So when Always and Forever came, he's like, okay, yeah, sure. But we did follow up with all of it, and it is the best it has always been. So to have that as a reference just proves what we would be able to do with more land and support more dogs.
So I was part of all those emails at the beginning when we first started taking over the pound, and he was on them. His name's Ted. And he I don't want to say he was opposed to us. He'd had a lot of people come in before and try to do the same thing or say they were going to do the same thing, and they didn't. They didn't follow through. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have the funding, their volunteers, the resources. So needless to say, it's like crying wolf. He didn't believe us. And I think I was most proud to see him go up there. I didn't know it was him. I had never met him in person. But after about 3 lines, I knew immediately who he was. And that made me very proud of us. Because if we could turn him around, then I feel like we can turn anyone around if they give us a chance.
Also, another complaint that they had, or a concern that they had, was that we didn't actually have contracts with any of the cities that might use the Miami County Pound if it's on our location. But we didn't just pull this out of the air. We had people that we've been talking to with different cities and with the county. So we don't have anything in place yet because there's not a building in place yet. There's not a system for them to use. But this came at the request of other people.
Yeah, we hadn't even had the concept. We were ready to build a building down in Osawatomie on the site of that galvanized metal building with no heat, air conditioning, toilet, windows. And we were going to bear the costs of that for the city if they would provide the infrastructure. And people from the city actually approached us and said, we have an idea. If you're going to develop the homestead, why couldn't this be incorporated in the homestead? And if it's approved, it will be incorporated in the homestead at no cost to the county, the city, or the taxpayers. We are going to do it because it benefits the community. And that's one huge criteria, is this is not a commercial enterprise. We're not a commercial kennel. We're not a commercial shelter. We don't charge adoption fees. We are doing this for the benefit of the animals as well as the community.
I think another thing to take into consideration is, like, if someone thinks, Wayside Waifs, they built on similar property and they built a large campus, they're open to the public. People can come by on a Saturday unscheduled and just go wander the halls. That is not going to happen here. You have to have an appointment. You have to schedule to come out. We're not just a public facility that anyone can drop by. And I think that's their big concern.
You have to have somebody with you. You can't just roam around the property unless you're a volunteer, you're walking dogs, something like that. But if you're coming to look around, you're going to have a staff person or a volunteer with you.
Big concern that I heard kind of repetitively while listening in was safety and the amount of dogs. And if the dogs jump over fences, get over fences. I've been to Always and Furever, and it is peace. It is quiet. So then for someone else to feel fear within that same exact place. So if we want to go over just why it actually is such a safe place to have this amount of dogs.
Well, first of all, they're always going to be supervised. If they're outside, they're supervised. Somebody is there. Somebody's going to stop them from jumping over a fence. Somebody is going to stop them from digging under a fence. We also have all the yards will have the 6-foot privacy fence, like a wood privacy fence. So that's going to be one fence that they would have to defeat. And then there's the perimeter fence. That's the 6-foot chain link, black chain link. And they would also have to defeat that with someone chasing after them. So they will be supervised. And also, I had another thought about the safety concerns. They also live next to a walk-in hunting area. And what do they think stops the bullets from coming close to their property? From the city goers that come out there to hunt whatever they're hunting with their big rifles.
My question on the safety is, do they voice these same concerns to their neighbors that have dogs in their yards?
That are also out running loose. Correct. Because they've run loose on our property, and that was also a concern of somebody, that their dog was going to get on our property and get hurt.
Like, I understand if someone has a fear of dogs and you're going to voice your concern about that, but make sure you're voicing that concern to everyone in the neighborhood that has a dog. Because it's not just dogs on our property, it should be every dog in that neighborhood.
I do think quantity is intimidating. But in a rural residential area such as this, that we want to keep a rural residential area, people are very free to have 3 or 4 dogs, and they're happy and their dogs are running loose. Our dogs don't run loose. They're not off leash. No dog is ever out unless they are double leashed. I understand the concern people have, but people are very free in the neighborhood in this rural residential area. Nobody's having you keep your dog on a leash, but we do. We keep our dogs on double leashes every time they're outside a fence.
I think this goes back to, again, what we have learned and how we have evolved. Because they did, again, bring up dogs that have gotten out of our property. Again, 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago was the last one. That is since when we have done the double gates, added the fences. This one will have the perimeter fence, which we don't currently have, although we put up a fence because the neighbors were worried. So I think, again, I can't think of the last dog that got out, because we have evolved and learned. And double leash, the double leashing was something that definitely came. We didn't do that until probably a year and a half ago.
The double gating is the big part of that, because you have to walk out one gate, close it. So if there's a dog in there with you loose, why would you open the second gate? And that's how the last dog got out, was just out through the door. That they snuck right out, somebody taking trash out.
Yeah, as Jen said, we wouldn't have been prepared to do this 4 years ago. All these concerns would have been legitimate concerns 4 years ago. But through lots of processes, we have evolved and now have a way to address all of these.
Have any of the people who have expressed concerns actually have asked to come up to Always and Furever and see these procedures, see the fencing, see the policies that we now have in place?
Actually, one of our neighbors, who I hope will be there on May 2nd, because she was prepared to come last month and got COVID, actually took the time to come up and ask some questions. We walked around, we talked about our safety measures, we talked about our fencing, and she went back and said, I changed my mind. I was worried about you guys. And I went to visit her again shortly before the meeting, and she said, I've been telling people who ask me, I got my questions answered. I went up, I saw it, I'm not concerned anymore. And I think that's part of this whole, we have the vision and we are there every day, and you have to know what you're afraid of and ask questions and be there.
I think it's easier to create the monster in your head and believe it for what you want it to be, instead of facing it and going in to find your answers. But instead, if you just keep going at it, it'd be like, this is my concern, this is my concern. But you might have the answers to your concern if you just go up and ask and see it.
I'd have the same concern too if somebody told me there's a new dog shelter coming in next door to you. But we know what it is. We can envision it, and it's not scary at all.
One thing I always tell my clients when we're out looking, people get so excited when they look at a home and there's nothing behind them. They get so excited, and that's suddenly their dream home. And they'll always ask me, do you think anything's going to come behind? And I always tell them I'll go look up who owns the land. But I tell them chances are, yeah, something will. The only way to guarantee it is you find out who owns that land and you make them an offer and you purchase the land for yourself. That is literally the only way you can guarantee it. Otherwise, you don't know what's going to come in. And so you need, if something does propose themselves to come in, you need to do your research. You need to go out, ask questions, talk to the people. And then if you still oppose it, go to the meetings. But I feel like you need to learn to be able to go to the meetings to speak against it.
And on all the past concerns, it seems like they were addressed. So some dogs may have gotten out 3 years ago. They were addressed. Always and Furever fix the solutions of, if there was an issue, we're continually trying to get it better. So if they actually came to the farm, saw something they didn't like, I'm sure we would say, well, we're going to figure out a way to fix it. We're fixers. We're problem solvers. We want the best situation for everyone involved.
I feel like one of the things that bothered me the most is how it was brought up, like, because it was posted on Facebook or our website that we were going to have 300 animals or we were going to have 200 parking spots, that, and now suddenly the plan doesn't have that we're trying to pull something over everyone and that we're then going to have 300 animals or larger parking or bigger events. But what it is we're listening. Jen is listening. She's trying to address concerns. She's got, advisors and designers that are telling her that's your dream, but that isn't reality. Here's what we need to do to scale it back to make it work. And she's taking all that in. And so the plan that is proposed as is has come down from her dream. She dreams big. I mean, that's just what she does. Everyone should dream big, but that doesn't mean you're going to make that huge dream. You're going to make a version of it as you learn. And so it bothered me that they were trying to make it seem like she was just doing that to get it passed. And that because she posted on Facebook, it was 300 dogs, we're going to have 300 dogs.
And that there would be no oversight afterwards. Nobody would ever come out on the property and check to make sure we didn't build 500 parking spots.
The one line that stood out to me was someone said they felt like they were bait and hooked by Jen originally buying the land, and it was going to be a small sanctuary, and now it's this huge dream and goal. And my first initial thought was, how sad of a world if you only got to settle for your first dream. And that was the expectation of, well, Jen reached her first dream of having a sanctuary. That's it. That's all it can be. Of why would we not want to continue to grow and see what this could develop into to save as many dogs as animals. And not only dogs, we've had multiple episodes talking about how it saves people as well, of finding your purpose, coming back to just cats. Sorry, and cats. And
sorry,
cats.
Beth.
You're good. And the cats. But they're not going to be feral and they're not going to be loose. They will be in a separate building. But that just really hit to me of having to settle just at one dream once you hit it. Of why would we not want something to grow and evolve? So with that, I need a transition here. We're going to share some of our letters that were at the meeting that were longer than 2 minutes, but were cut off at 2 minutes, and some explanation on why they were so important. Amy, yours is one of the featured letters.
My name is Amy Stecker, and I'm the realtor who initially wrote a letter to the owners of this land. I wish you all could have seen this land from the beginning. Thanks to the awesome tree cover that we plan on remaining, you probably didn't know that the land was a junkyard. It was full of trash and junk, and it was dangerous and unsightly. It was there for many, many years, but what did Always and Furever do day one of owning the property? They began picking it up. Not even an hour after closing, they were cleaning the land. Because that's what Always and Furever does. They make everywhere they go a better place. The land is now the beautiful land that we could envision when we first saw it. When was the last time you heard of an organization not looking for money from taxpayers or tax breaks? I have many types of clients, and it normally always has to do about the money, even the nonprofits. A&F wants to bring so much good to Miami County at no cost to you. Your community will be safer and cleaner. Your dogs will definitely be safer if they are ever found as a stray. As a realtor, I can tell you that if you purchase land or a home or chose to build in a developing community on a main road close to a highway and didn't expect development, I don't know what to tell you. Development is going to happen everywhere. The land easily could have been sold to a number of developers that would be standing before you as well, asking for what they want. The difference is this will create so much good and so much community, and it'll be beautiful and still be behind the tree line that we all drive past and love. The economic impact of A&F should not be overlooked, not just from the jobs created, but from the people that come to Spring Hill, Miami County, and spend money. I know many people want to keep where they live hidden, but I find it amazing when someone in another country or in California now has it on their bucket list to visit Spring Hill, Kansas. And do you know what they want to do when they are here? They spend money in your businesses, in hotels, in the city. I myself am now a regular at the Bean, a place I never would have gone to otherwise. And finally, several times it was stated what happens when Jen quits. Clearly, you guys don't know her well if you think that's even a possibility. So let's go with what if something tragic happens to her. We as a group know how quickly that can happen. A&F has a board, they have a team, and I can assure you we would only get even more passionate to continue the dream if even the worst happened. As a real estate professional, I can tell you that it is not the type of neighbor that will hurt your property value. Of course, there will be some people who choose not to buy in the area because of it, but for every single one of them, there's another who would choose to buy in the area because of the rescue. And the majority of buyers would be completely indifferent. They would only care about having land in Spring Hill. We have donors around the world, and it's only growing. Think about that for just a minute. People around the world are spending money to make Miami County a better place. That's pretty incredible. Because we do things right, because we want to be the change in the world for dogs, for cats, and for people. A&F has absolutely changed so many people's lives for the better, including my own, and is heaven for so many homeless pets that used to just be thrown away. The homestead will be something that people across the world will be proud of. Please open your heart and be a part of the change in the world.
Absolutely incredible and fantastic.
3 minutes instead of 2.
But you hit so many points on that. And with your realtor background, I do want you to go in a little bit more on appraisal value of the neighboring homes.
So first of all, many of the homes are honestly too far away for an appraiser to even take note. Honestly, Jen's property buffers it, which obviously she also has a rescue on it, so they might also notate that. I'm not going to say it wouldn't come up on an appraisal report. That would be a lie. I do not believe most of them would take a hit on value. Well, yeah, everyone's values are going up right now. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, if you have land in Spring Hill, Kansas, it doesn't really matter what's around it. It's going up. But from an actual appraiser standpoint, some of them might note it. Some of them might put a deduction. However, it's going to have so many other things going for it that those deductions are going to be minimal. And I'm only talking the ones that actually touch our land. There are most of these properties that are in 1,000 feet do not even touch the property. That's the big thing to note is they're, like you said, a quarter mile away. They're not going to note that. But when it comes down to it, in these markets, we all know properties are going crazy, and it's only going to, that is not ending. The market is not crashing. So if you own property in Spring Hill, Kansas, on land, that is going nowhere. That property value is only going up, and the markability it's not a deficit. I've had clients that literally say, put me within a mile search of Always and Forever. And if something comes up with land, I want to buy it. So I have silent searches is what I call them, because they aren't truly looking, but they get emails if something with land within so many miles of Always and Forever comes up. People want to live close to it.
And like you said, for every person that wouldn't want to buy property there, there's a person that would. So it's always going to counter. And
the thing is since we're going to be behind the tree line, someone's going to have to dive deep into researching what it is. And then if they do that research, they're probably going to become fans. So they're going to be there looking at the house. They're not going to hear barking. They're not going to be able to see it. So they're going to realize it's not a big deal. And what's going to be great is they're going to realize no warehouse is going to be there. So I know what's going to be there, and I'm okay with it. There was a developer that was looking at the land. I don't know how many houses I'm sure they planned to wipe the whole thing. All the trees would have been gone. I don't know how many houses they were planning. I don't know the details. I wasn't the listing agent, so I don't know those details. She just said there was a developer looking at it. They would have had to have gone before and gotten permission to, because there are rules for, how close the homes can be built together and whatnot. But the point is they all would have been there. Like, they all would have gone before the board. They all would have asked for it. That acreage was not going to be sold to someone to build one single property on 40 acres. Very few people can afford that, first of all. Second of all, that's just not what that's not where the value's at. The value is in the 40 acres for a reason, like to develop it into something. It would have been rare, and it definitely would have been rare for someone to purchase it and keep it vacant like it is. So, but any of the neighbors could have. It was for sale for a month before we went under contract. So it's not like we snatched it. I tried. That's why I wrote the letter. I wanted us to buy it before it ever went on the market. We didn't know it was going to go on the market. I literally was just trying to buy it. And then it was on the market for a full month because obviously it took us a while to get all our ducks in a row to actually buy it. So it was there.
I appreciate your background knowledge of being a realtor because it brings so much more information and answers that... Go ahead.
Well, one more thing I forgot about is someone did mention at the meeting that they wish we had made our offer contingent upon getting the conditional use permit. Obviously, this has taken us, we closed on this land almost a full year ago, and it has taken us a year to get to this point to have the conditional use permit meeting. You have to give your neighbors a certain amount of time. You have to, there was no way our offer would have been accepted on the contingency of getting a conditional use permit, because that's at fastest, we could have done that in 6 months if we were speeding through it. And at the most, if we're sitting here at a year. So the only way we could have gotten that land was not to have any contingencies on it. So that's, I said it 100 times to Jen, this is not, we've got to get our permit, when she said, have faith.
And honestly, with us getting it first, it has just held the ground. It has held that land in the sanctuary mindset of peace, of No one else is getting it. Those developments are not getting it. Subdivision is not getting built on it.
And just think about how much happier our dogs are just because we own 40 acres. We haven't built a single thing there, and our dogs are healthier and happier. Our people are healthier and happier because now we have actual trails and nature, and we have places to walk our dogs, and our neighbors should be happy because before we were walking our dogs much closer to their property, but now we walk further away from their property inside 40 acres.
Thank you for sharing your letter and your experience of being a realtor. And so now we're going to go over the next steps for the upcoming meeting in May. If you're a local Miami County resident, what you need to do. If you're not, but are local and can still show up. And then if you're not either of those and supporting from afar, if they're still accepting letters and whatnot. So Judy, if you want to go over all of that.
Sure. First of all, we are so grateful for everyone who really came out for the April meeting, whether they were on email, whether they had written letters, or whether they were there. It was epic. I mean, people came up to me and said, I've never seen a hearing like this with so many supporters. There were people in Australia sitting up at night listening to this feed. And it's incredible what's happening in Paola and Spring Hill, Kansas, and Miami County that's got the attention of the world. The other thing is, we appreciate you all so much, but we need you again. We need you on May 2nd. Those of you who came before and have spoken, no one can speak again who has spoken before, but we know many people were waiting to speak. And that is open to you. The commission is there to hear all of us speak and give our support, even if it's only with a one-word sentence. And we are still looking for emails to go to the Planning Commission. I'm going to give you that address right now, which is planning@miamicountyks.org.
But if you have already sent in an email, we ask that you don't send in a duplicate one because we don't want them to think we're trying to dupe them with super support.
Yeah, that's true.
However, if you spoke at the meeting, you can still come to the meeting. I plan on being there. I just don't get to speak again.
We're all going to be there. And it's incredibly heartwarming to see the number of people who would turn out and support.
Sheila, you plan on being there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Sheila and I are coming in hot, aren't we? We are.
Doors open at 6:30. Those of you who are Miami County residents and are supporters, we really need you to be there when those doors open because that room is very small and we need you to be there. We have the vision and it's hard for other people to have it and we want to share it with them. I just kind of wanted to leave people with a comment that we had in an email from someone with a lot of experience in these sort of hearings. And she told us something I'm clinging to, and I hope the rest of the organization will cling to too as well. Never underestimate the power of strong, courageous people who are trying to make the world a better place. And I'm really proud to be a part of this, and I know all of us around this table are doing so as well.
Absolutely agree. And I'm going to follow that up with, again, how we end every episode, our mission statement, which is why we're all here, why we're all asking for support. Our dream is to wake up into a world where every animal, despite age, breed, or health, is treated with kindness, dignity, and respect, and most importantly, has been touched with love, even if only for a moment. So I think that always should be in the back of our mind of what our purpose and mission is and why we do what we do and why we hope to share that with all the concerns, and that at its root is more important than any concern with this public hearing.
Again, I would like to thank you guys for coming today, Sarah, Judy, and Amy. And as always, it's never too late for a happily ever after.